So my name's Suzanne Emerson. I am the costume designer for Series 2 of Wren. I became involved in season 1 and they just happened to have one uncast part, which was the role of Ida, who was described at that point as the grumpy old woman. And so I went and auditioned and Kate said yes and kindly changed the name to just Grumpy Woman rather than Grumpy Old Woman.
Two boards.
So after season 1, I went to London and took a degree in set and costume design for theatre. And I just graduated last summer and was looking at Mandy for jobs as they came, and suddenly Wren cropped up. So they welcomed me on board and I then panicked.
Become a Marked One and join our Patreon community for exclusive insider access, merch, interviews, bloopers, downloads, short stories and more.
I mean, honestly, the work that Miriam did in season 1 was phenomenal, and I genuinely feel that my contribution is like 5% on the top of all the work she'd done. You know, I describe it as standing on the shoulders of giants. With the way the Series 2 was going to be filmed, which was largely in chronological order, there was a progression of Wren's dress because they were travelling and over a period of time, and inevitably the dress would get dirtier, shabbier, and there were battles, fights, you know, damage would be done along the way. But we always needed the option to be able to jump back and to go and film earlier. So what we decided is, rather than remake the whole of Wren's costume, we would make a second underdress. We needed to see it slowly sort of getting rips in and tears in. And the first thing obviously was to find a fabric that was as close as. Those eagle-eyed people might just see a difference between the arms and the lower dress, but actually we were lucky. The match was pretty good.
Search every building. We've got fugitives on the loose.
We had a sergeant and a captain rank. 2 of each appeared in Series 2. What we wanted to see is a progression that ran through the Canas soldier, through these 2 ranks up to the commander. Chris, who directed episode 2, was very keen that Sergeant Medanis was very intimidating and had he just walked into the tavern and really had presence.
Take her!
So we used furs, a big fur, to give her real authority figure. Then we needed to create the captain. We added a cape which mirrored what the cape that Otham was, but not as significant. It was that step change between the sergeant, who was more of a working soldier travelling with the fur, to a captain who had a bit more authority and a little bit more elegance. Sol's character is a very strong character. She needed to be the matron of the tavern, you know, brooking no nonsense, a wrong foot and you're heaved out the door. So she needed to really be very solid.
No! Why do you
And then Tansy obviously is a reflection of her mother, but she's the waitress, she hands the beer out. So we didn't want to make her sexy, just make her slightly softer perhaps than Sol. Hestinger is the conduit for Wren and Hunter to find the archivist. He's the contact point. The backstory that we gave Hestinger is that he used to be wealthy. He'd basically fallen on hard times. So he's come from a wealthy background, and we wanted his coat to reflect that background. We wanted it to be, have some embroidery and some, just hints of wealth. But at the same time, he's spent many years on the road, just out and about, probably living a fairly rough life. So we wanted to see signs of that life in the coat.
I was very clear. The deal's off.
Bibliana and Joran were both designed by a colleague of mine as an assistant designer, Hannah Sophia Young, and I studied with Hannah at Central, and we both graduated in the same year. And Hannah has an amazing creative side, and she also has a background in Eastern European culture. Bibliana, I think particularly, has a reference to Eastern European women and the idea that she pulls the skirt up over her head and that forms a cape. And we also, Hannah designed this, stitched a lot of motifs into Bibliana's costume, particularly down the front panel. The idea is that Bibliana often sitting maybe at markets and she whiles away the time just stitching things in. So she might be sewing something precious that she wants to keep attached. So her skirt has a lot of things like keys attached to it, or little, things that she's picked up along the way. Joran, on the other hand, reflected youth and a young person who's basically been orphaned or possibly looking after her younger siblings from a very early age, so very much a survivor, you know, essentially little more than a child. And we wanted to reflect that by sort of showing skinny arms and the fact that we could see her legs and her ankles through her ragged cloths that she sort of wraps around her feet to protect her feet, and you know, holes in her jacket. The sense of that sort of very young person surviving in an adult world by wheeling and dealing. Yeah. It's obviously a different series. It's a series on the move, whereas series 1 was very much set in one place. You see developing relationships, you see just the growing world that becomes more and more intricate and more detailed, you know, as the series progress.